Welcome to Legacy News, your go-to source for things that are happening in the world, usually involving countries yelling at each other. Today, we're diving headfirst into the dumpster fire that is the escalating trade war between the United States and France. It's got everything: tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, and enough economic jargon to make your head spin. We'll be breaking down the 7 key factors shaping this battle royale, from France's oh hell no counterstrike to the ripple effects shaking the global automotive industry. So buckle up, because this isn't your grandma's trade dispute. This is a full-blown, no-holds-barred trade war, and frankly, it's getting weird. Alright, let's rewind to the halcyon days of early 2025, when the concept of world peace was still something people ironically put on tote bags. Trump, in his infinite wisdom, decided to slap a hefty 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports because apparently protecting American manufacturers requires punishing everyone else. Now you might think this is just another Tuesday in the chaotic reality show that is American politics, but you'd be wrong. Because France, with the elegance and fury of 1,000 Michelin-starred chefs told to microwave a croissant, said non. And not just a polite non, but the kind of non that makes you question your entire understanding of the word. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, a man who clearly understands the importance of good cheese and not being walked all over, basically said, "Listen here, buddy, we're not going to stand around like sad baguettes while you kneecap our industries." And thus began the trade war to end all trade wars, or at least, another one for the history books. Now, you might be thinking, John, this is all very interesting, but how does it affect me, a person who just wants to afford a new car that doesn't run on hopes and dreams? Well, my friend, buckle up, because this is where things get personal. See, the auto industry is basically built on steel and aluminum. It's like the flour and water of car manufacturing. So, when those materials suddenly become more expensive, guess what? Cars become more expensive too. And not just a little treat-yourself expensive, but the kind of expensive that makes you consider investing in a really nice bicycle. Car manufacturers are now stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either they eat the cost and watch their profits disappear faster than a baguette in a boulangerie at lunchtime, or they pass the buck on to you, the consumer, who is already struggling to afford gas that doesn't cost more than a small island nation. It's a lose-lose situation, unless you're in the business of selling bicycles or, those little scooters that college kids ride around on. While the United States is busy building metaphorical walls, and let's be honest, sometimes literal ones, France is out here making friends and influencing people, specifically the Chinese. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my new best friend who might lend me a significant amount of money. Okay, maybe that's not the exact saying, but you get the point. France and China are becoming besties, and their blossoming bromance is making the United States sweat more than a politician trying to explain a suspicious campaign donation. Trade between the two countries has skyrocketed, and it's not just about cheap plastic toys anymore. We're talking high-tech gadgets, luxury goods, and enough wine to drown the sorrows of every heartbroken cheesemaker in Wisconsin. This partnership is a game-changer, shifting the balance of power and leaving the United States looking about as relevant as a flip phone in a 5G world. Chapter 4. Europe's Auto Supply Chain, a game of Jenga gone wrong. Imagine, if you will, the European auto supply chain as a giant game of Jenga. Everything is carefully balanced, each piece dependent on the one below it. Now, imagine a toddler with a tiny hard hat and a destructive gleam in their eye comes along and yanks out a crucial block. That, my friends, is what these tariffs are doing. The European car industry relies on a delicate ecosystem of suppliers and manufacturers, all working in perfect harmony. But with rising costs and the looming threat of more tariffs, that harmony is about as stable as a unicycle on a tightrope. Suddenly, everyone is panicking. Suppliers are hoarding materials like they're preparing for the apocalypse, while manufacturers are left scrambling to find alternatives that don't involve selling cars made of cardboard and duct tape. It's a mess, and the only winners are the companies that make antacids and stress balls. Now you might think France is fighting this battle alone, but that's where you'd be wrong. Because when America comes at one European nation with tariffs blazing, It's basically declaring war on the entire continent. And nobody messes with the EU, except maybe the EU itself, but that's a story for another time. Macron, never one to back down from a fight, especially when it involves defending French wine and cheese, has rallied the EU into action. They're like the Avengers, but instead of fighting Thanos, they're fighting unfair trade practices. And instead of superpowers, they have really strongly worded diplomatic statements and the ability to impose their own tariffs. It's a battle for the ages, and the fate of the global economy hangs in the balance. Will the EU prevail, or will the US continue its reign of economic terror? Stay tuned. France, realizing that putting all its eggs in the American basket is about as wise as investing in a Betamax factory, has decided to diversify its portfolio of trade partners. Because let's face it, relying on the US for anything these days is like relying on a toddler to follow a recipe. Messy, unpredictable, and likely to end in tears, mostly yours. So, France is out there, making new friends and strengthening old bonds. They're like the popular kid in school who realizes they don't need to hang out with the same group anymore because the world is their oyster, and also, they have really good cheese. China, with its massive market and insatiable appetite for luxury goods, is looking more and more appealing. And let's not forget about the rest of Asia, Africa, and even those quirky countries in South America with the really good coffee. The world is France's oyster, and they're ready to slurp it down, shell and all. Remember those friendship bracelets we used to make in summer camp, the ones that were supposed to symbolize unbreakable bonds and shared secrets? Yeah, well, the US-EU version just snapped, and it's not pretty. These trade tensions aren't just about economics. They're about trust, or rather, the lack thereof. Every tariff, every retaliatory measure, is another nail in the coffin of a once strong relationship. It's like watching a slow-motion car crash, except instead of twisted metal and shattered glass, there are broken promises and shattered economies. The future of global cooperation is hanging by a thread, and that thread is looking awfully frayed. Will these two former allies be able to patch things up, or are we witnessing the beginning of a beautiful but ultimately doomed bromance? Only time will tell. So, there you have it, folks. The US and France locked in an epic trade war that would make even the most seasoned economist break out in a cold sweat. Can these two titans of industry find a way to kiss and make up before the entire global economy goes up in flames? Or are we witnessing a fundamental shift in the way countries interact? A world where trade wars are the new normal and everyone is just trying to survive. Share your thoughts in the comments below because frankly, I'm too emotionally drained to come up with a witty sign-off.